Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. Alright, look, we knew the Kanye album bomb was coming. We knew it would be overwhelming, courtesy of the fact the album is over 20 tracks long. I'm frankly just grateful not all the bonus cuts charted. And given that we got Drake's album bomb waiting in the wings for Certified Lover Boy, yeah, no preamble. Let's just get to it. Now for our top 10, where I will admit I was surprised that Butter by BTS once again reclaimed the number one. In this case, it's tied to the Megan Thee Stallion remix, which saw a streaming boost, but she's not actually getting credit from Billboard outside of the streaming chart, because whatever passes for the original version of this song outsold anyway. I find it kind of weird that Billboard recognizes a definitive version of this song, given the multiple versions, the ISRC spoofing, but whatever. With the radio tanking, this feels like a one-off just for this week. And you know what? I'm not complaining, given that it knocked off Stay by the Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber at number 2. Even if it saw Kanye cut into the streaming margins, sales are up. The radio is really throwing a lot of weight behind this one. We're not getting rid of it yet. Contrast this with Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran at number 3, which is now ruling the radio, but lagging enough on sales and streaming to not get over the hump. And this elbows back Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo to number 4, where it looks like radio and streaming are actually starting to decline. Similar case for Kiss Me More by Doja Cat and SZA at number 5. Then we got our first dose of Kanye West, with Hurricane debuting at number 6. I'm gonna cite the features this week, even if none of them are properly credited, because the presence of The Weeknd and Lil Baby, it's the real reason this debuted as high as it did on the insane streaming, and pretty much little else. See, I don't believe for a second that this Kanye West album bomb is actually built to last beyond the residual streams, because there's no radio push or much single sales to speak of, which means that any serious streaming challenger will knock this back fast. See what happens next week. Then we got Industry Baby by Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow at number 7, which is still clinging to streaming even as its radio and sales are too slow to make up the difference, followed by Levitating by Dua Lipa at number 8, which is getting rotated out pretty much across the board, but still has some momentum. But now we got the real problem this week. Fancy Like by Walker Hayes at number 9. I mean, I could go on an extended rant to how this is borderline novelty trash coasting on cheap virality, but that's not really what this is anymore, because Nashville radio still hasn't thrown any real weight behind it. It's here on sales and streaming. People like this, and by the time we get to the end of the year, we're gonna have to delve into what that really means on one of my lists. Finally, we've got Kanye pulling up the end with his Jay-Z collab in Jail at number 10. Again, streaming, we'll get to it later, we know the deal. But now to our losers and dropouts. Normally the worst part of any album bomb discussion, but considering the swath that Kanye cut through the Hot 100, I'm honestly not complaining that much, especially as most of what he got rid of was due to the exit anyway, or just outright sucked. So in the dropouts, we saw Permission to Dance by BTS, You by Regard, Troye Sivan, and Tate McRae, and sadly, Tombstone by Rod Wave. They're likely going to fall short of the year-end list. And with those that have comfortably notched their slots there, Lil Bit by Nelly and Florida Georgia Line, Famous Friends by Chris Young and Kane Brown, Rap Star by Polo G, Astronaut in the Ocean by Masked Wolf, Without You by the Kid Laroi and Miley Cyrus, Glad You Exist by Dan and Shay, and after breaking all sorts of records as one of the longest-running songs in Hot 100 history, Blinding Lights by The Weeknd. Now on to our losers. Look, it's over a full third of this chart, folks. Let's deal with the easy exceptions. Off the debut, we had Matt Hardy 999 by Trippie Redd featuring Juice WRLD hit 100, and Summer of Love by Shawn Mendes and Taney hit 85. Continued losers are You Should Probably Leave by Chris Stapleton at 91, Motley Crue by Post Malone at 86, Volvi by Aventura and Bad Bunny at 72, and Rumors by Lizzo and Cardi B at 32. And the one gain that got knocked back is Chasing After You by Ryan Hurd and Maren Morris at 47. Then, Starting from the bottom up, Don't Go Yet by Camila Cabello at 89, Ain't Shit by Doja Cat at 88, Singable Saturday Night by Cole Swindell at 83, Get Into It Yup by Doja Cat at 81, Drunk and I Don't Want to Go Home by Elle King and Miranda Lambert at 79, then we've got Yonaguni by Bad Bunny at 73, Wild Side by Normani and Cardi B at 71, Todo de Ti by Raul Alejandro at 69, Love Again by Dua Lipa at 66, We Didn't Have Much by Justin Moore at 65, and 2055 by Sleepy Hollow at 62. Then it's Whole Lot of Money by Bia and Nicki Minaj at 60, Skate by Silk Sonic at 57, Cold Beer Callin' My Name by Jameson Rogers and Luke Combs at 55, Waukesha by Moneybagg Yo at 54, Every Chance I Get by DJ Khaled featuring Lil Baby and Lil Durk at 49, Late at Night by Roddy Ricch at 48, Thought Shit by Megan Thee Stallion at 46, and Things a Man Ought to Know by Lainey Wilson at 45. And now finally, to end things off, Arcade by Duncan Lawrence at 44, Forever After All by Luke Combs at 41, Traitor by Olivia Rodrigo at 39, Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish at 38, Waves by Luke Bryan at 37, Pepes by Farruko at 36, Heartbreak Anniversary by Giveon at 34, Leave Before You Love Me by the Jonas Brothers and Marshmello at 33, Peaches by Justin Bieber, Daniel Caesar, and Giveon at 31, Leave the Door Open by Silk Sonic at 29, and Need to Know by Doja Cat at 24. Did you follow all that? Did any of you appreciate all the editing it's going to take to get all this assembled for chart positions that are only going to be more in flux when Drake hits next week? But given that we only have one return this week with Repeat It by Lil Tecca and Gunna at 99, might as well rattle through the Kanye West songs of the album bomb I'm not covering. Now, given he's got 12 songs in the top 40 alone, I'm very much still doing my job here, but as for the rest... Come to Life at 77, New Again with Chris Brown at 68, Jail Part 2 with DaBaby and Marilyn Manson at 63, Keep My Spirit Alive with Westside Gunn, KayCyy, and Conway the Machine at 59, Donda with Stallone at 58, No Child Left Behind with the Sunday Service Choir and Vory at 53, Pure Souls with Roddy Ricch and Shenseea at 52, and 24 with the Sunday Service Choir at 43. Alright, that is a lot of new arrivals. Hell, we're even getting to more here, but we're not starting with Kanye. Number 96, Into Ghetto by J Balvin and Skrillex. Is anyone else a little bit perturbed on what the hell J Balvin's doing? Maybe he's just hunting for ways to further differentiate himself from his peers, but some of his creative decisions have felt a little questionable as of late, and teaming up with Skrillex, well, I mean, it's not as bad of an idea as teaming up with Metallica, but I was kind of skeptical here, even with Taney showing up uncredited as well. And... I gotta be honest, I'm not sure there's all that much to praise here. The chintzy organ and the sample backing slightly more interesting percussion than your standard reggaeton bounce, but it's rarely running over 2 minutes with only more rubbery switch-ups and J Balvin rattling through a description of a street party. It feels more like a fragment than a fully composed idea or song with a hook beyond the sample. In other words, you know what, I see where it would work, maybe not bad, but it's not all that interesting either. Let's be real. Number 90, Tell the Vision by Kanye West featuring Pop Smoke.
We made it. Thank God that I made it. We made it. Look, mama, I made it. Look, I remember the days.
Okay, so do you remember the version of this song that was on Pop Smoke's album with the samples and the Pusha T verse that actually charted a few weeks ago, and I actually already talked about on Billboard Breakdown? Yeah, Kanye threw it on this album too, dropped all the interesting samples, the Pusha T verse, and all the drums, and mixed Pop Smoke's vocals so badly off the lead piano loop that it feels like a glorified muddy interlude more than anything. More importantly, it sounds like dog shit, and not even in an interesting or potent way. And even as someone who has never really liked Pop Smoke, this feels like a slap in the face to recontextualize a fragment of what he actually said to lend pathos to an album that was already short on it to begin with. Forget this shouldn't have charted, this should not have even made the album. Period. It sucks. Number 64, I Am Not a Woman, I'm a God by Halsey. I kind of of feel bad for Halsey. I really do. They were priming a really ambitious project that I was shocked they were able to convince a major label to ship, and they have to go surprisingly in a head-to-head against Kanye. Now, to be fair, I'm not sure that was an obvious single that was guaranteed chart presence, and I include this song in that category, even if it's got some potential. The pulsating whir and the wonky downward synth progression playing off the sharper clatter of percussion, it's actually a pretty solid groove, even if it feels like Halsey's vocal presence is inconsistent even within the song. Again, whoever mastered this really has some explaining to do. But I'm also gonna say, I'm not sure the lyrics quite work here either. I said this on the Pulse, it feels like in chasing a lot of these dualities, Halsey doesn't really elevate them beyond highlighting the extremes of their nature. It feels very hyperbolic, but nothing in the production or delivery really amplifies that power clash, so it just comes across as trying to be edgier than it is and not really translating to more. I don't know, I know to some queer audiences this has a little more resonance, but it feels compromised from hitting just as hard as it could. All I'm saying. Number 52, Heaven and Hell by Kanye West.
No more logos, no more chocos. We on Bezos, we get payrolls, trips to Legos, connect like Legos.
Oh look, it's another glorified interlude on this album that absolutely sucks. And yeah, a significant portion of my distaste comes from that pitched up, grainy sample opposite the bare hand clap, and the weird feeling that part of this synth melody reminds me of Gangsta's Paradise from Coolio. But it gets even worse when you look at the content. Only Kanye West would compare himself to Jeff Bezos in 2021, and then frame himself as a divine warrior, which by the end has him scatting gunshots, and unlike when he did it on Kids See Ghost, it doesn't remotely feel visceral or punchy. So yeah, it's the other flagrant dud on this album. All the worse when actually examined on its own. In other words, it sucks. Let's move on. Number 40, Remote Control by Kanye West featuring Young Thug.
Remote control. Got it on remote control. Like a CEO.
Okay, we're now in the top 40, and we got a lot of Kanye West to move through here, and given that I already did review the album, I'm gonna try to keep this relatively short for each song, which is not that difficult, because there's really not much here. In this case, we got some wonky bass synth touches bracketing a whistled interlude, a lot of painfully dry percussion, and lyrics framing Kanye as woozily above everyone, detached but still in remote control, only reinforced by Young Thug's verse. Probably why he attached that sample of the glob glob gab glab at the end that led to a mimetic moment, but really not much else. And honestly, it wasn't much of a meme either. Number 30, God Breathed by Kanye West featuring Vory.
I know God breathed on this. I know God breathed on this. I know he got his hands on this. I know we got a chance on this. No, I never planned on this. I might need a band on this.
So I was kind of surprised to see Vory all over this new Kanye album. Apparently he caught a break from being on the Carter's album in 2018 that pretty much everyone has already forgotten about. But he does a lot of auto-tune crooning on Donda, and here he provides support to Kanye's sharper delivery that reminds me a little bit of Yeezus opposite the sputtering sample and the low vocals. All building up to Kanye planning to say something really transgressive, and the most we get is God the Father like Maury and a Dustin Hoffman reference, which goes to show that Kanye West will actually dig for those accused multiple times of sexual assault, all of which will be redeemed by God's breath, I guess. Also, it runs for 5.5 minutes to try and sell the same clattering breakdown. Yeah, I gotta admit, I was not moved the first time. Number 28, Believe What I Say by Kanye West.
Who knows when was the last time you felt the love?
Honestly, this might be one of the closest cuts to an older Kanye song. The chopped up sample of Lauryn Hill, a bit more of an actual groove and a sung hook. I actually don't even mind the interlude from Buju Banton on the back half of the song. The problem is that it's basically Kanye West complaining to Kim Kardashian that he's given her everything that she wants and she's still not satisfied. It basically runs as an extended guilt trip where Kanye places himself in both a messianic role, again, as both the savior and the victim, where he still thinks he can get off lines like free throat coat for the throat goats, and it feels kind of sanctimonious in a way that it really can't excuse. So yeah, the production might be better, but it feels sketchy in a way I really can't escape. Didn't care for it. Number 27, Jonah by Kanye West featuring Lil Durk and Vory.
Name is being gone and it's not fair to fight them all on my own.
Alright, full disclosure, this is a song I actually wanted to like. The focus on the deaths in Chicago with melancholic verses circling all the success and waste that comes with losses in the street, Vory and especially Lil Durk really deliver here, especially as Durk sees the pointlessness of grudges between Kanye and Jay-Z. And you know, at the start, I was almost on board for Kanye's verse, until you realize so much of his verse feels like veiled threats towards those who are not coming to him with the proper respect. Gee, given the past few weeks, can't imagine who he's talking about here. It just completely shoved me out of any atmosphere of reconciliation, not really helped by the production being very thin with its warping, beeping synths. Again, this had the potential, it could have been more, but even then, it feels like I'm stretching to make it even that. Number 26, Jesus Lord by Kanye West featuring Jay Electronica. This is probably the album's centerpiece, and for the most part, for good reason. The hook builds well off the claps and swells of organ behind it, and I actually think Kanye's verse, while kind of rambling and a little disconnected between the stories of street vengeance and trying to find reconciliation with the loss of his mother and his own grief-stricken depression, it mostly works. Putting aside the Barney and Buzz Lightyear references, obviously. But then Jay Electronica shows up, and drops arguably the most layered verse on the entire album. A lot of nested political and religious references, which has the expected pseudo-conspiratorial apocalyptic angle, and that's not to touch on the Nation of Islam reference, but what I find the most striking is that the monk visiting the Rothschilds, of which Jay Electronica clearly sketches a parallel as yet another heavenly crusader, kind of ironic given his own connections to that family of storied wealth, but when matched alongside the closing monologue from Larry Hoover Jr., who highlights the systemic failures of capitalism that contributed to all the gangs that locked up his father, you have to wonder who's actually seeing the bigger picture here. I mean, it's not a bad moment, but given that it also runs over 8 minutes, probably not one I'm gonna revisit. Just saying. Number 22, Sharing Locations by Meek Mill featuring Lil Baby and Lil Durk. Alright, got a bit of a break from Kanye here, with a collab that actually makes a lot of sense in terms of street-level framing. Interestingly, Lil Durk might be taking the hook, but this is not a traditionally structured team-up, as all three share the same verses and they actually trade bars back and forth, which I actually tend to like. And I actually like this a decent bit. A big part of that is how Meek Mill still has a taste for bombast with his brand of trap, with all the twinkling backing off the choral sample and the faster stutter of the bass beat. But his flow has actually gotten a bit sharper, and he can match Lil Baby and Lil Durk pretty effectively here. Now, I don't really think the content makes the most of it. A lot of gunplay, cars, stacking cash, screwing other guys' girls, brand name porn. But you know, if you're gonna go for it, might as well have a solid hook and some decent bombast to sell that more ominous vibe. I can see this going off in the right environment, so yeah, overall I dig this a decent bit. Cool stuff, good song, check it out. Number 20, Praise God by Kanye West featuring Baby Keem and Travis Scott.
Back to life. I serve, follow your word, see with new sight.
Yep, back to Kanye for a bit, but only just the one here, and actually 2 Baby Keem features in a row, which is better to acknowledge than whatever the hell Travis Scott thought he was doing, sounding fried out as all hell, opening up the song opposite the swamped out bass and the fragmented sample. I'm not going to deny it creates some atmosphere, shame there's so little actual content beyond some vague references to walking through darkness with God, but the real focus is Baby Keem, and you know, there's some things I kind of like that y'all treat your Lord and Savior like rentals insurance line, as he tries to maintain his vigil towards living a good life. The problem is that half of his verse is just filler and repetition, and that's where we get him going into his squeakier voice that is the definition of annoying as all hell, and about the worst way possible he could have ended his verse. So yeah, one good line, okay atmosphere, when it's opposite everything else that annoys me, I can't give it a pass. Number 18, Family Ties by Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar.
Jumping that bitch, hitting that fire, jumping that whip, thumbing that bitch, coming that bitch, ho, drumming that bitch.
But you know, speaking of Baby Keem, I guess with the co-sign from Kendrick, we should be expecting to hear a lot more of him in the near future. But more to the point, if this is a sign that Kendrick Lamar is actually moving towards a new album, I'm certainly approaching this with some real expectations, even if this song is just 2 extended verses with no real hook here. And alright, okay, there are a lot of parts I really like about this, but I was looking to be a little more hyped than I am. Yes, Baby Keem is better here. His flows are faster and sharper, and you can tell he's a clever dude in knowing how to get the right money and cosigns on his come up rather than just taking anything, which allows for his hunger to feel pretty visceral, even if he does repeat bars to fill up space a little bit too much for my liking on some choppy staccato flows off the horns and the clunkier trap beat. But then there's Kendrick, coming in after that shuddering beat switch with all the confidence, where it's not only clear he's aware that so many people have been wondering where the hell he is, but he's also back. He's gonna reassert dominance, and while I can appreciate him dissing those faking the streams and all the overnight activists, and that line about him being the vaccine of the game, that was great too, I'm not crazy about all his flows here. For the most part, this verse, he's got a very yelpy delivery that doesn't quite flatter him. I prefer his raw, groovier side, and it's been a while since we've gotten that much of that. Still, while I don't quite think it's great, if this is the guest verse that kicks off more Kendrick to come, I do think it's pretty damn good. So, yeah, I'll take it. Number 17, Moon by Kanye West featuring Kid Cudi and Don Toliver.
So soon, only so soon, how can I get through?
Alright, last 6-year-old Kanye, let's get through it. And here's another one I actually like a decent bit, mostly focusing on Kid Cudi's verse, where he's trying to find some form of peace and transcendence with the moon, backed up by the very spare synth and Mike Dean's guitar. And even if I'm not really crazy about Don Toliver's falsetto, or the song basically feels a little like a fragment, I would love to hear a proper crescendo built out of this. It's also a more abstract, centered brand of spirituality that honestly resonates so much more than a lot of what Kanye's done. And yeah, credit where it's due. It's a really good song. Check it out. Number 16, Junya by Kanye West featuring Playboi Carti.
Junior watching, I be on my tell him this.
Kind of jarring to go straight to this, isn't it? Kind of blows holes in your spiritual vibe when the majority of the song is a brand name flex with Playboi Carti, with some really rough vocal mixing alongside the swampy bass and organ, and then the half-formed shots at Drake where he wants him to get out of the way of this release, and saying that he won with the Bucks before he dropped the expected Giannis line. And he mispronounced Giannis. And it's cuts like this that just shatter any attempted atmosphere on the album, especially outside of that album's context. It just feels like a half-composed fragment. In other words, it's not good for being a fragment. Let's move on. Number 12, OK OK by Kanye West featuring 5Yo Foreign, Lil Yachty, and Ruga.
Okay, not okay. Think it's good, get out the way.
Only Kanye would think, in 2021, we need a verse from Lil Yachty, which is a dicey choice when he opens up his own verse taking more pot shots at Drake as being deceptive and an imitator with no true identity, with Kanye framing himself as the GOAT, which, no, I don't really care about rap hierarchies, but given how few of your bars that you write, like Drake, you are not in that conversation. Also, the oily synth opening up the song sounds awful. Yachty's verse features him choking women in bed, and then saying everything he does is for the broken youth, and Ruga might be the act most screwed by Kanye West censoring all the swearing on Donda with his verse. Kind of a shame, because otherwise he's just not that interesting. Also, this song's not good. Next. Number 11, Off the Grid by Kanye West featuring Playboi Carti and 5Yo Foreign.
Everything we did for the crib, everything we did, how we live. All this smoke got a scent, all that smoke Kevin sent. Everything I spoke, what I meant.
So the big story with this song is how 5Yo Foreign came out and stole the entire show with a massive surprise, with this song becoming a drill banger with his verse. The discourse honestly kind of reminds me of when Rick Ross did something similar on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and just like then, I mean, it's better for what he's known for, but considering just how low that bar is, I'm just not all that impressed, especially when we're stuck with some really bad vocal mixing for Kanye himself, and a sample that also reminds me this was a leftover from the Whole Lotta Red sessions. Now, granted, this probably would have wound up a highlight on that album, but then you get to Kanye's verse, where once again, he is throwing a lot of pot shots at Drake. He's got the line, she put my paintings inside of her living room, and that is absolutely a double entendre, not a particularly good one. And then amidst all the divine flexing, he throws in the brand names and that messy reference, and we're back to the prosperity gospel bullshit once again. I mean, at least the drill percussion finally has some impact, and Kanye got one of his writers to give him one of the best flows on the album, but again, it feels like it's compromising its own impact, so not all that enthused. And it's not that good. Number 10, Jail by Kanye West featuring Jay-Z. So what's the bet that they're still not fully reconciled? I mean, Dirk wouldn't have highlighted it if there wasn't still some animosity there, even if Jay is trying to sell the return of the throne that'll likely never happen in the next decade. But Jail is kind of a wonky song as it is. The vocal mixing's messy, but it does feature some of Kanye's best singing, especially with the choir behind him, and I think the swell of buzzy synth really had some potential to explode. But come on, nothing said or done on this song or this album is sending anyone to jail. Stakes that are utterly muted by Jay-Z opening his own verse by comparing himself to God. Honestly, I really don't like Jay-Z's verse here. Half because he says that he tried to get Kanye to stop with the red cap nonsense, but then it leaks later that Kanye West wanted to get the ex-president to show up at one of the live shows, and half because of that hell of a life and yikes reference that bookends his verse and reminds me of my favorite song from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and one of my least favorite songs in Kanye's entire catalog from Ye. It implies that this is all provocation, it's all transgression, something that nobody dares to do. Shame that, again, I don't buy the stakes. And when the song just kills its momentum by running for another full minute with an abortive drum breakdown, yeah, there was potential, but this could have been way better. And finally, number 6, Hurricane by Kanye West featuring Lil Baby and The Weeknd.
I can float on the water. Father, hold me close. Don't let me drown.
Now, if there's a song on this album that could be a single, it's probably this one. Thankfully, it's also one of the better songs here, mostly because The Weeknd takes the bassy synths and the spare tapping percussion and makes the song effectively his own with that extended hook. And hell, I'd say with the gospel swell at the end of the hook, it's one of the best moments on the entire album, especially as Lil Baby delivers on his verse where his come up and hunger really does translate. Even if I could swear that he's dropped this verse at least like 5 times already, and the vocal mixing is really not great. Now, Kanye West himself, honestly, it's not a bad verse either. You can tell that he's trying to cast off the distractions that came with all that success and privilege and wealth, but never gave him any fulfillment. And that recklessness and throwing it away was often judged, but with God, he would be okay in the eye of that storm. Honestly, it's a potent idea, and it makes me think if Kanye West had been able to focus, build off of that, the album might have actually maybe worked for me, I don't know. But as it is, one of the best songs on the album, probably, but even then, it could have really soared with a little bit more refinement, and bereft of any larger support on the album, the contrast is kind of glaring. And yet still, I'm actually giving it a tie for the best of the week between Hurricane and Moon with Kid Cudi and Don Toliver. Probably the best version of what Kanye's spiritual vision could have been on Donda, and it kind of sucks that it fell so very short, at least for me. With the honorable mention going to Family Ties by Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar, because again, it's very good, just didn't quite fully click as being truly great, though the potential was there. Worst of the week's easy. Also another tie. Television with the late Pop Smoke with Heaven and Hell, with dishonorable mention going to OK OK with Lil Yachty and Ruga. And next week, yeah folks, it's another episode of The Drake Show. Y'all been warned. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Boss. And I'll see you next time.